It wasn't on mine
What are you
either.
talking about?
Oh, completely missed this one.
Okay, did I put the, yeah, there we go. PA system. Sorry about that, everybody. I hit the wrong button twice or something. I don't know. We're all here now
Yes, ma'am.
in chambers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Time being 5:53, I would like to call the Economic Development Subcommittee for June 21st, 2023 to order. First, I will read the note to residents. All citizens are welcome to attend public board and committee meetings in person. Meetings are also live streamed and archived by Franklin TV on the Franklin Town TV YouTube channel. Meetings are also shown live on repeat on Comcast Channel 11 and Verizon Channel 29. In an effort to maximize citizen engagement opportunities, citizens will be able to continue to participate remotely via phone or Zoom. The link for the meeting, the Zoom meeting is on the agenda. If you would like to call in, it is 1-929-205-6099. That is
Recording in progress.
929-205-6099. The meeting ID number is 850-6297-9258, and then press the pound button. Tonight, we are going to have an update on our marketing and branding project. And I am just going to thank Julie. Is she going to, Julie, are we going to throw it straight to you? Jamie?
No, we're gonna.
No?
We're just gonna. Nope, we're gonna.
We're going to throw.
gonna
Well,
do
first, I just want to thank Julie for all of her hard work before Jamie takes all
Yeah.
the credit for it.
Nope. This is one, thankfully, I don't have, through you, Madam Chair, I don't have to take any credit for, except hiring the people that are getting it done. So, just to backtrack really quickly for the folks that are on Zoom and watching from home, the town council approved a goal a year and a half ago, actually probably more than that, but the last couple of years, to do a marketing and branding analysis. And I think the council, the school committee, other stakeholders in town have all chimed in on a lot of different ideas about what marketing and branding could be. Trailhead signs, wayfinding signage,
right.
you know, reevaluating the identity of the community, logos, seals, letterhead, stationery. I mean, there was a lot of ideas out there, and you know, we've been talking about this, I think, as you know, Madam Chair, for a while.
Here's an example.
And
There's an example right here. The letterhead's,
right,
the seal's different.
The
on
seal's
the agenda
different.
and the official letter.
a perfect example. And
It drives Glenn crazy.
well, we've got Ben Franklin from the side of the face. We've got Ben Franklin's front of his face. We've got different. So, anyways.
Yeah.
Representative Roy was successful, I believe, in the last ARPA or one of the economic development bills last session, and got the community $50,000 to work on this analysis. And thank Jeff for his efforts on that. And then, which really gave us, as you know, Madam Chair, the ability to start this process along.
Right.
As fate would have it, you know, as Lily is only really part-time for the town, part-time for the schools, right? Full-time, but split between the two. And it just so happened that we got the money at the end of calendar year 2022. So we hired Julie Jacobson, who's the former manager in Auburn. We snatched her up right before she retired. She retired, she came here. And she has a huge background, as we all know, on this work from the city of Worcester for decades. So between herself and Lily, in addition to all of you, and also want to obviously mention that the school committee was involved in this. Dee Spencer, Dave Callahan, Al Charles have all been participatory with the superintendent, because I think we can't really get to a great brand for community or identity without thinking about education. So.
Right.
They've all been very supportive. All of you have been supportive, because we got another $50,000 of local appropriation, so now there's $100,000. But we never had a real timeline, plan, or pathway
Right.
to what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And so I noticed you just held it up a second ago, but now it's in the packet for
that's
people
good.
to look at. But now Julie and Lily have created for us
You can hold it up for
Yep.
for people.
A
Yeah.
timeline, Chris, that you will never zoom in far enough to read that font.
That's
It
only
is
page one.
It is font 3 or whatever, but I think as I heard you say earlier, Madam Chair, it takes this long, and it's 2 pages.
Yes, it takes this long to get to the fun stuff.
Get to the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So, it's been a couple of meetings offline to get this kind of project going, but we thought because it was a goal for the council underneath the EDC, Madam Chair, you wanted to have a meeting just to at least acknowledge that, all of you and others have been working really hard on this, and now we have Yellow Brick Road, if you will, to hopefully start working on some of these things. So.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's important for everybody to know that there was a group of people that got together and we talked about what we wanted to do. And then if you look at this timeline, you'll see that Julie separated into different phases and how we're gonna pay for it, the phase, I think is really important. And they'll be going at the same time, but I think we all got that group of, with the town staff and with the school, that we all agree, like, this is the way we want to go forward. So I thought it's really important for the rest of the EDC to understand what we're thinking about doing and what we want to do next, how we're going to implement this. But now we have a plan, because we didn't have a plan before. So it seemed a bit daunting, the task of making a plan. Right? And now we have one, so that's really great.
You should have made a plan to make a plan.
It was so daunting that it kind of
couldn't do it.
It literally
It was like,
I think it literally overwhelmed me.
Yes.
And maybe really quickly, maybe we could ask Julie and Lily to go through the 4 phases, just high level, because many listeners may be saying, well, what's the plan?
Yes. Yes. Well,
And it's
definitely.
inclusive too of everybody's ideas.
Yeah.
There's the last quick point I wanted to make, that everybody's ideas that have come through the community, through all of you and the school committee, those ideas are represented in this plan. Some people had ideas that were phase 4 and that were at the end. Some people had ideas up front, but it lays out a pathway for 4 years. 4 years
Yeah.
of stuff. So,
And that's an aggressive timeline too.
it still is an aggressive
If
timeline.
we can ask Julie to explain that a little more, how,
Yeah.
hopefully
Maybe
by,
Lily and Julie could maybe
Yeah.
really quickly go through the high-level 4 phases.
come on up.
Just kind of
You wanna sit at the desk?
go through them really quickly.
Yeah.
We're at the mic, it doesn't matter.
Or the mic, yeah.
Whatever people want.
Wherever you feel
Yeah,
more,
it's a casual Wednesday.
wherever
We're
you
going to
feel more
summer.
comfortable, it's okay.
All right, thank you. The font is very small. I had to go buy glasses so I can speak to you.
Make sure you had your glasses today.
Yes. So basically, as Jamie said, just to give you the overview, so there would be 4 phases in this, and it's anywhere between a 3 and a 4-year plan. And the questionable part is, it could go longer than that. It could go 3 to 5 years. It depends on what you're gonna do for implementation. And part of this plan is coming up with an implementation plan. So once you have this whole process done, part of this process is coming up with, what are you gonna do with this? How are you gonna use it for economic development? How are you gonna use it for marketing? How are you gonna use it for wayfinding? How are you gonna use it for signage on your roadways and into and out of the town? So that is another piece of this that has to get done by the consultant and the various groups that are involved. So basically, the 4 phases, the first one is the brand audit and the creation of the standardized materials. In other words, we're talking about the official seal use only. So as you pointed out, Madam Chair, that you will find many different seals that are in use.
On
Yeah.
today's agenda.
And then even I look up behind you and over here on the desk, and there are just many of them in use. And Lily has done an amazing job of inventorying all the different uses of the seals in town, and it's pretty overwhelming to see how many are used.
Just out of curiosity, ma'am, how many did you categorize that we have? It's like 8? It's like 8 different versions of it? Doesn't Franklin TV have their own version too?
Well, I gotta find I have it in front of me, but let's see, there's,
Franklin TV had an inventory, at least 8.
Yeah.
8 different seals.
what I'm looking at with that specifically to the town of Franklin, there's about 10.
Oh.
I think that's including some of our, that's not all sealed, it's also, just our fire department logo, rec department, senior center. But there's 7 specifically that's just Ben Franklin, or different versions of our actual official seal.
No wonder people are confused.
What is the actual, what is there one actual official seal, or is it just?
It's the most boring one.
Yes.
Yeah,
There is, under the state, there's always, through the
Right.
chair, there is always an official seal, so there is one official seal. And I think that's why phase 1, you have to decide, assuming that's the official seal that you're gonna use, to make your internal communications systems consistent with one another, so that the public understands when they see somebody coming for an inspection and they've got the seal, they know it's accurate, that person is a town employee.
Right.
Or a town ID card, or the seal that's on the car, or even the correspondence, when they receive a letter from the town administrator or receive a letter from the treasurer collector, they need to know that it is an official letter because it's consistent with everything else in town. So that is the first phase to do that. The second phase would be the brand development and outreach. And this would really involve establishing a branding advisory committee. You can see all the different steps here, but basically learning from the community what are the different types of strategies and brand development that you can come up with. And that goes beyond just using a seal. That's potentially developing a logo and an expression or a tagline to go along with it. And that's more on the marketing end of it than the official use end of it. Then the third phase is the brand activation. So once you actually have your logo and once you have your tagline, how are you going to implement it? Where are you going to use it? How are you going to use it? And that's coming up with another plan that really needs to be specific, because tied to all of those activities that you want to do, you've also got to tie a budget. So if you want to implement it correctly, you've got to look ahead and say, how much money are we going to invest in this?
Right.
And how much is it going to cost? And where can we get the funds? And how creative can we be in getting non-local funds to put into this? And there are some good suggestions out there. There's some options that the town could look at, but you can't really start looking at it until you understand what it is you want to do. And then the last phase would actually be the marketing phase. So one is, the wayfinding and the website and things like that, and the last would be the marketing. And that's where you could spend 6 months, you could spend 6 years. It all depends on what you're planning on doing. Is the town going to be putting together a video, promotional video? Are you going to attend trade shows? All of that would be down the road, but you can't really make those decisions until you get through these other phases first.
right.
So I think the important thing to notice is that these phases are not linear. One phase doesn't necessarily have to be completed before you start the next phase, and it shouldn't be. In order to keep the process moving, you can start part of your phases, and that's why you'll see some of the lines overlapping on the timeframe. Start them. But they're pretty much set up, as you said, to be aggressive through the chair. It is an aggressive timeline, but it also builds in a little bit of wiggle room, understanding, an RFP. If you put an RFP out and you don't get a lot of response, you may have to go out a second time. And so it doesn't really account for that. This is assuming everything goes well, and you get enough firms to come in and give you a bid for the consultant work that you're gonna need to have. And as the town administrator pointed out, his thought was, and it makes perfect sense to do it this way, to have your state grant pay for phase 2, and likely phase 2, 3, and potentially, it wouldn't really be implementation, it would really be 2 and maybe a little bit into 3, and use your town dollars for phase 1. So what is not considered a phase, but it's something you just need to be aware of, that you still need to do the preliminary steps of getting your budget together, getting your state approvals, and getting your state contract documents. And that can take a couple of months.
Right.
So overall, that's the overall view of it. We tried to, Lily and I went through it and tried to get every single step that's involved, and I know it looks overwhelming, but it's important to understand, sometimes you can't go to the next step until you finalize one of those steps. Not always, but you wouldn't be able to go to the next step until you've done, so let's say, the first 6 steps. Lily, is there anything you want to add?
That was a pretty good synopsis. I do also want to include, I know we were just talking about the different logos. It's also looking at our vehicle fleets as well, and sort of when we, if it'd be strategic about implementation, especially with funding. So, different signage, may cost more to implement, but at first, but it may help reinforce the brand identity, the most public-facing way that we can in terms of, resident experience or visitor experience. So I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that it's more than just looking at all the seals, it's like looking at all of the other supplementary things that we use internally and also externally.
Right. Mel, kind of following the logic that you were saying earlier, where not everything has to be done in the correct order, but I was thinking kind of towards your comment about the implementation and where there would be kind of projecting forward, saying, okay, if we come up with a new brand, if we come up with new designs, if we come up with new marketing, what parts are we going to apply that to? So then you kind of have to think ahead to yourselves, do we want to apply that to street signage? Then you have to think about how that's going to apply to that, and that's has its cost. But what was running through my head is it's basically, to summarize, you're going to have to talk about from the smallest possible media to the largest possible media, which could be something as big as Ben on the wall over here, or something that we have on display on banners, street signs, parks, and so forth. So it kind of needs to fit the gamut or range of media that we could have in the town, but still be something that would look just as attractive big as it does small, and everything else in between. And that's kind of on the implementation part of things, because you have to kind of think to yourself, what do we want to apply this to? To what extent later on down the line do we want to apply this marketing media to? You know, because the reason I say that is because just like yesterday we were getting prepared for a meeting at my union where the Secretary of Commerce came to visit, and we were setting up props and marketing things and background images and stuff like that. And one of the things that I thought was dramatic was we had a banner, a local 103 Iowa International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers banner of our image that was as big as this wall. And that was a great background prop, because now no matter where you look from any camera angle, you've always got that imagery in the background. And that's something that is big picture, but it's also, I can't assume how much that cost, because that's a big expense, and that's something that we need to be thinking about kind of early, adding that into our budget down the line and coming up with the funding to come up with stuff. It all kinds of ties together.
Yeah, Julie did talk a lot about grants out there, and also Kobe, Councilor Frangillo mentioned some marketing and economic development grants that are out there for these kind of things as well.
And through the chair, you're correct. You need to look at your implementation phase is really key. So if you really do need to have a plan, and what are you going to use this for? So the group that has been getting together, that we've been discussing this with, we did look at probably about 50 different communities in the Commonwealth and put together a document on how much they spent, what they used it for, and where we were able to put a link. We put a link in there so you could see the final product. And most of them use it for wayfinding. Almost every community, once they go through this process, wayfinding is an enormous part of it. And part of that wayfinding could be visitors kiosks, where you have an informational kiosk placed within certain areas of the town to help guide visitors and residents to points of interest or things that are going on. Some communities go as far as they start to need to change their street signs, they change out all their street signs. And you'll see some of the smaller communities, depending on how many streets they have, change all their street signs and put their logo on their street sign. So the minute you drive into that community, you know that you're in that community because of the street sign. You know, that's an extreme of how you can use it, but it all depends on what your budget is and what you really want to accomplish with it. And I think that's why it's really important to have the consultant work with the town and work with the committee to decide what your implementation plan is going to be. Because you don't want to go through all this and then not have a plan.
Right.
And then wait too long to start your implementation. And then by then, it's time to start revisiting it all over again. You know, which can happen also. So, you know, some of these campaigns take place every 10 or 15 years in communities, because some of them do have a shelf life. But if you get the right logo, you put it all together at the right time, and you get the right community buy-in and get stakeholders involved in it, I think you'll be able to keep yours for many years.
Patrick, do you have any?
So like,
questions?
eventually you could have like a major sign someplace with all the historical sites and have it up, something like that. I've seen those.
Yeah, signage, the wayfinding signage is a large part of it. You can have it be directional for pedestrians. If you have a pedestrian, you know, your downtown area,
Yeah.
you want to guide people in the downtown area to what some of your town assets are, your library, you want to guide them to Dean College, you want to bring them to the theater. You can have signage
Okay.
for that. Some of those types of signage, when it gets real specific to a business, you want to most likely ensure that you can change out the names on those signs. If you're guiding them to certain named things, because as a business may leave or move or expand and not be at that location, you don't want your entire sign to not be
Right.
usable any longer.
Right.
So signage is a large thing. Maps, community maps that you can give out to visitors who come when they're looking for how to get around and where to go. That's a smaller use of it. So it's the physical signage and the physical use of it on your, maybe on your banners that you might have. You might use it on your website. It's an identifier for the town. So it is, there's so many different uses of it. As you mentioned, you know, putting up large signs. But the ones that are really kind of neat are the community informational kiosks. Those are really nice because those have the opportunity to be changed out as you need it to be changed out.
Right. Any other questions?
No, that's great.
Glenn?
It's good stuff. It's all
Good stuff?
I'm anxious to see the process get started. I think one of the things that pops into my brain, like I'm sure probably pops into your head, is one of the goals that the master plan committee is hoping to do is to take what is an existing master plan document, update it for its objectives, but also maybe even update it for its branding. And that could be maybe a good starting point for that process to maybe start, because a point that I had brought up with Brian and Amy and Mel and Kobe with the master plan was there are 6 different elements, everything from housing to land use to public facilities, open space, and so forth, that for all intents and purposes are separate sections of the master plan that could have their own color, their own type of branding, their own type of logo, even if it's a modification of the existing open space one, because I love the what you guys did with the open space plan and that the imagery that goes along with that. So I would love to see something similar that was brought into the master plan and maybe start using that as kind of a stepping stone for the branding, if that's possible.
So I think when we look at phase 1, which is the brand audit and creation of standardized
Yep.
town materials, that's so part of that process is looking at all of the different imagery that we have used in the past, looking at what some of our major marketing points were, taking a comprehensive inventory of sort of what we've been putting out there to just sort of get it all together, and then that we can work from there. There's a lot of different ways to implement branding. I did want to note that I believe it was 2019 when we did the MAPC marketing in the market
Yep.
study.
Yep.
There's about, I think, like 3 to 4 pages of recommendations that are, I think 3 or 3.5 pages that are specific to different ways to implement communications, marketing, and branding through a community development and economic development lens. So it can really sort of, once we have that brand, we can apply it in different ways. But in terms of like the actual master plan, I'm not sure exactly when the timeline is for that, the conclusion of that, and whether that would be with the master plan branding that we're developing specifically to that master plan, because this is also going to be happening sort of in tandem. So I think it will sort of see where we all sort of lie, but I do think that the master plan is going to help inform some of this. So I think we need to just make sure that we're on the same page, and we're, you know, when we get to the point of having some recommendations, obviously I just want to highlight that the master plan is going to be really important in identifying what the priorities are as well.
Oh, no doubt, when it comes to prioritization and objectives in regards to that, but I'm talking about actually using some of new logos and ideas and incorporate that into the master plan design once the book is published.
Okay, I see, yeah.
I would
Jamie,
through Madam
Jamie's
Chair,
like,
I would
think
just
Jamie wants to
say,
something.
I would just say, you know, Feels like this is me being me these days. Let's get through the first 6 months of, let's see how far, I think you recognized it, Councilor Jones, a moment ago. I think a couple did. You know, even what's here is a fairly, is a fairly aggressive timeline. And I think you have one as well on the master plan. So I would say, the check-in point would be, later this year. And we'll see how far we get. And then I think, ultimately, you almost have a master plan here. Ultimately, right?
Master plan
For marketing and branding, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, this is not 7, I guess the master plan's 10 years. This is probably 5 in reality.
Right.
At a minimum, right? So you're really looking out through the rest of the decade anyways. And I think to your question, Councilor Jones, about when do you use this stuff, I would hope, maybe this is too commonsensical, but I would hope that if letterhead were agreed upon per se, or a logo or seal, why would we wait?
Right.
But, I think,
Exactly.
I think logistically
That's the answer we
speaking,
want to hear.
Yeah.
The answer you
but
want.
logistically speaking, we've got to coordinate with 8 school buildings or whatever it
Right.
is, I know there'll be some people, for example, and rightfully so, I think Julie, you brought this up, the fire department's probably gonna need in the policy to look for an exemption off of this, because they're gonna wanna do red, right? I mean, is their letterhead, and that's pretty common. That's not abnormal, that's common, so,
Okay.
there may be, I think Superintendent Gegier brought up the idea of like, okay, maybe there's a standard school, but like each of the mascots at each of the different schools may have some different stuff too. So it's kind of identifying that base and then working with each institution to say, wow, we'd like to add a book on the library one, or how does that work? So I would love to say, once these things got done, why wouldn't we use them? But I think logistically speaking, using them right away may cost money and may not be able to happen right away either. So we just have to kind of take it piece by piece. I hope that answers your question. Or at least addresses it a
No,
little
absolutely.
bit.
You're not wrong in the sense that once a logo's been decided, there's no reason why we can't just kind of
Right.
incorporate that in. To one of my points, I don't know if I made myself clear, is like, for instance, the O of the open space and recreation, how it had the leaf kind of incorporated into that design, if I recall that correctly.
Did Bricolai did that?
I designed that.
Did you
I
design
did all
that?
the design materials for the
yeah.
open space and recreation plan.
So
Okay.
what
Thank
I'm
you.
getting at, for instance, is that's a very clever design. And what had been popping into my brain is if it were, for instance, repurposed for, I don't know, what's a good one? Facilities or housing or something, you could put like a house instead of a leaf that incorporates the same general circle feel, but the leaf gets replaced with a house in some design, and it kind of adds a same feel to, anyways, it's kind of,
I think so. I see what you're talking about, sort of branding the master plan. So I know we talked about in a different meeting, we had a conversation about having a different color scheme for the master plan
Yes.
that we incorporate into all of our outreach materials.
Yep.
That would be, I think, a more immediate thing than waiting until we were not going to have the logo until later on. So I think it's, for cohesion, this is the way we did, a lot of the open space and recreation plan, and Bricolai did a lot of the other additional outreach stuff, but we had a whole style guide, which is something that is incorporated in here for the brand, like the seal usage.
Gotcha.
And then there's gonna be like a logo usage guide, and that's something that we would also distribute to vendors and things like that, so everything will be very clear and concrete.
Yep.
But typically, if you're going with a certain color scheme or plan for outreach, so with our Friends and For All, everything was sort of the same color scheme, and we sort of incorporated that into the final deliverable.
Yeah.
But I think typically you would stick to the branding for that specific plan.
Yep.
Um,
logical.
and it would be outlined at the beginning of that process, which we just need to refine and give to the consultants.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Thank you.
of course.
So you said style guide, I think that's
Yep,
what
that's what
Counselor
it was.
Jones was asking about.
Yeah.
Now we have the word,
That's the word.
so we can all
Style
understand.
guide.
Style guide, seal usage,
Yeah.
logo usage.
Yeah,
Through the chair, just also
Yes.
keep in mind that looking at the 50-some odd communities that we saw, the process just to get to the point of where you actually have a logo that everyone's agreed on, a logo, a tagline, that's gonna be at least a year from the point that you actually hire a consultant. So hiring the consultant, if you follow the aggressive time plan, you get your RFP out, you
Yep.
get everything done, you could have a consultant on board hopefully by December, start your process right in January, so you look to the following December, January to have all of that in place as far as your logo, your design,
That's like
your
with
colors.
public input and all that, right? All the
Whereas
public
as,
meetings.
the town administrator said, the seals could be done earlier,
Right,
once, that's the internal. The external is a little bit more extensive.
right.
But that, you're still working on your master plan. At that point, you can always go back before you finalize your document and start incorporating the logo and
Image,
colors.
yeah,
and
absolutely.
seals.
Yeah, that's a couple of years away, 18, 20, so it's
Okay.
perfect.
Kobe, do you have any questions? Anything else to add?
Just quickly, no questions, this is something that I think is important, I've been waiting for, I'm glad that we have, this timeline in front of us, that we're already here. Be aggressive, let's move forward quickly. I think, what's gonna take time, is identifying who we are, right? Like, I think we sort of all nod along that we have a shared understanding, but, a city and a town could be a whole bunch of things at once, but really identifying what are we a family-friendly community? Are we a traditional New England community? Are we an intergenerational? Are we just advertising the fact that we're, well connected to different places, right? What is our main, identity? That's what's really gonna be, the most important piece of this, I think, in the end, because that's what filters down, into, how we talk about ourselves and how we present ourselves through, logo and all that. So that's the piece that I'm excited for, but to get there, we gotta start moving, some things forward.
We're moving.
And then I talked about, I like that we talked about it in the small group, but, where I'm most prepared to scrutinize expenditure is on the marketing end of things. And like you said, that could be a 6-month, it could be a 10-year thing, just making sure that we're actually doing things that make sense, and we're not just doing them to pat ourselves on the back and say that we did something.
Right, it has to be worth it, yeah. Jamie, you have anything to add?
All set.
You're all set? Patrick, you're all set? Okay, well, thank you both for being here tonight, and also thank the Capital Committee, right? They're the ones who gave us the money to start.
Yep.
And then, and Jeff Roy for the wants to do this phase 2.
In the schools.
Oh, does anybody out in Zoom land have a question before we say goodnight? Well, Lisa's out there, I don't know.
Oh, hi Lisa. There she is. I have my glasses on.
I guess she doesn't have a,
I'm sure
questions?
the Franklin Downtown
Hi,
Partnership.
There she is.
hi, everyone. No, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to tune in to listen.
okay, well, I'm glad you did. Thank you for tuning in, because I think this is really exciting for everyone.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Good, yay. Okay, so thank you both so much for all the information and all your hard work.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. Let's see.